Soccer Central.
Hello, and thank you so much for pressing play on the latest edition of the Michigan Soccer Central podcast, your weekly dip into the world's game being played right here in the Great Lakes State. How's it going? My name is Robert Kerr, your host of the program as always. Maybe not so weekly at the moment between lots of different activities. I've been away, but lots of soccer going on. The world of soccer never sleeps. So we're going to run through some headlines, and to help me out, fresh off of helping broadcast the Red Hot Red Wings, I've got producer of the show and many other programs, Jenny Hojnacki. Thank you for joining me.
Anytime, Rob. It's always a pleasure to jump on here and move in front of the microphone for the first time in a long time.
Yes, for those who don't know, Jenny puts about 99% of all the episodes together and has to listen to far too much of my voice and does thankless work. So thank you, Jenny, for all the work you do. I'll give you some shine here. Thank you so much for helping us put the show together.
It's a labor of love, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, that's even better than I could have hoped for. But like I said, I've been away for a little bit, but the soccer world's been kicking on. You guys can check out, I'm sure you've seen on Michigan Soccer Central social media, the high school season is in the postseason. So I know there's a lot of brackets and a lot of coverage of the high school postseason on at MI Soccer Central across the social media platforms. And I got to give a shout out to University of Liga coach Dave Dwahey. I saw that they were on a fantastic run and went through the whole regular season undefeated. I also want to give a shout out to fill-in head coach Luke Zagorski. He filled in for Coach Mario at Walled Lake Northern last week, and it got a win in his first appearance as a head coach, filling in for Coach Mario out there in Walled Lake. So 100% might be a good place to leave it, but good shout out to Coach Luke out there. Also, a quick note, there was a rivalry game, Michigan and Michigan State played, but no goals there. But the photos that our fearless leader here at Michigan Soccer Central, Dan Garnell, he had some coverage over there, had some pictures. And the soccer stadium at University of Michigan looks pretty cool. Have you ever been out to Ann Arbor for a U of M soccer game, Jenny?
Can't say that I have, no. I've heard stories, but I have not actually experienced it for myself.
I like that it looks like there's a grandstand on one side and like a very modest, almost like a lower league English sort of like 4-step bleacher sort of stand on the far side for the U of M students. It looks like a cool thing to go see, or a good venue to see a game. I should really go out there. I need to do a trip to a U of M soccer game, and I have another bucket list location. I've never been to Lansing Common game. I've wanted to for about I guess their whole run, the 2 years, and haven't made it up there either. Seems like a good atmosphere. Getting a little sidetracked though.
Nothing wrong with a shout out for Lansing Common. We love those guys over there. Eric Walcott does a great job running that club.
Yeah, I mean, we've had those guys on here before, but yeah, definitely need to do an Ann Arbor soccer trip for U of M. I've been to too many AFC Ann Arbor games in comparison. And then, yeah, up to Lansing for that. But in bigger news, Detroit City FC made the playoffs on the last day of the season, backing in the most backing way, and you can back in with a 0-0 draw at home. And then getting a win, Russell Cicerone, hometown guy, former Bucks, Flint Bucks player. I don't know if it was Flint Bucks at the time, but Michigan Bucks player gets a win for Sacramento Republic over the dueling team, Miami FC, going for that 8th seed in the USL Championship. So local guys' goal buries the Miami FC, and Detroit make it in. So this weekend, DCFC will play the number 1 seed. What do you think of that final weekend and the prospects ahead, Jenny?
I think it's there's no more appropriate way for Detroit City FC to make it into the playoffs, considering the 0-0 draw, the 1-0 smash and grab. Their defense has been what's got them this far, and it makes sense that they would get through in a game where they don't score a goal because their offense has been kind of, shall we say, so-so all season long, but it's their defense that's kind of kept them in it. And so it's sort of appropriate that a 0-0 draw against, oddly enough, the team they're going to be playing in the first round is what gets them in to begin with here in the postseason. So is it the way you want to start the playoff run? No. You'd prefer to get a win, go in there with some sort of confidence, especially with the way they ended the season with poor showings, particularly against Phoenix, and then just unable to play very well on the road at the end of the season. So it's not the way you wanted to get in there, but you know what? You're in. Your defense is going to be able to keep you in games, and you know what? 0-0 against Pittsburgh, 0-0 after 90 minutes, 0-0 after 120 minutes. Anything can happen in penalties. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's true, but I feel like I don't know, at home against, or the number one seeded team at home, it's all in their favor. So I mean, anything's possible, and definitely Detroit has a magic to them, but that magic definitely faded a little bit at the end of the regular season. They took some tough losses at the end there on the road. They
did, and a lot of it is probably you're gonna look at depth as kind of being the main driver behind that. Because, I mean, you look at guys like Stephen Carroll, Matt Lewis, Devin Amumentu, who's coming off an injury, by the way. They played just about every single game, and that includes the couple of games in the U.S. Open Cup, the entire 34-game USL regular season. These guys, they're probably knackered by the end of that, which sort of explains the 5-goal outburst at Phoenix in early September. But I don't know. You look at the team, and it's like they can't score goals, which is not particularly good. But at least the defense can kind of keep them in the game, and it's going to be different than what you saw because Pittsburgh had nothing to play for in that final game. They already had the number one seed wrapped up. They knew it was just a matter of, okay, are they going to play Detroit City FC or are they going to play the Miami FC? And they didn't really have any reason to go all out and try to burn out everything they had for a win that wouldn't get them anywhere. So that kind of helped Detroit City FC as well. So I'm not confident going into Saturday, but all I can do is hope that Detroit City's defense can hold on. And even though Pittsburgh's going to be going all out in this one, they're going to play with everything they've got because it's playoff time now. They cannot afford any sort of slip-ups, especially not in the first round against the number 8 seed.
I'm glad you brought up Devin Amumensa, the Black Arrow Award winner.
Yes.
And I think Player of the Season, and he was getting some USL Team of the Week awards as well. So he was huge, and last season, it was his injury that kind of, curtailed that season. And then this year, he was a big part of their solidity and why they were able to do as well as they in fact were able to do, especially at the back. And I didn't realize it, but he actually ended up playing 26 starts and over 2,200 minutes. And so he really did have a bounce back season, which was great to see because he's a pretty good player when he's on and in form, and definitely key to that back line. And then getting to this, you said you weren't super, what was the word you said? You weren't super hopeful.
I'm not confident.
Not confident about this weekend. And then you also commented on the depth. Yeah, that's been plaguing them the whole season. They probably don't have a lot in their legs, but, stranger things have happened, but yeah, I don't think there's a lot of optimism. I think what you're saying probably might ring true for a lot of other observers. And with that being said, even if they do make a run, they won't be coming home. They'll likely have the away fixture the rest of the way in as the bottom seed. So Trevor James has coached his last home game for DCFC at Keyworth Stadium and is moving upstairs in the management, general manager type role. Well, what are your feelings on that, given that you're a pretty long-standing DCFC fan and, a keen observer? What are your thoughts there on the end of an era and what might be coming?
I think this is a positive move, I think. Trevor, he's a great coach, and I will certainly miss him on the sidelines there, but he was kind of pulling double duty these past couple of years. He was serving as a general manager, getting all these players in. He was the main guy going out and recruiting guys, finding talent, and trying to get them in here, as well as being the head coach. And I know this is sort of a popular setup over in Europe, but even that popular setup where you have a club manager who does both roles and does everything they possibly can, it's starting to fall out of style. You see more teams bringing in this director of football, is what they call it across the pond. It's what we call a general manager here in the States. And I think what this will do is allow Trevor James to focus on that recruitment aspect, that identifying the type of talent that can come in and help this team, especially as they find themselves on increasingly stable financial ground going forward in their USL Championship tenure. One of the things that's been holding Detroit City FC back is the fact that they are this amateur club playing in a small stadium, relatively cheap ticket prices compared to the rest of the league. And they had one of the smallest, if not the smallest, operating budget in the USL Championship going into the 2023 season. And they've been hoping that they can do a little more business in terms of gate revenue, in terms of sponsorship, and in terms of non-traditional revenue that can help them bring in more income to be able to possibly afford some better players, some more top tier USL Championship talent, and even on longer deals. I mean, you saw a couple of guys. Devin Amu-Mensah, he signed a 2-year extension before this year. Last year, every player, I'm pretty sure, was on just a single-year deal for the 2022 season. Several other players now, Devin, Stephen Carroll, Dominic Gasso, I believe, signed a multi-year contract when he signed from the academy this summer. They're going to be able to do a little bit more of that going into 2024, especially with Trevor James no longer needing to coach the team. He can focus on that recruitment aspect, that general manager and talent finding job that he does so well already, just because he's got so many contacts in multiple continents, and his work with MLS, his work in the Football League in England. And so I'm very looking forward to what he can do as a solo general manager as opposed to the dual role.
I think DCFC supporters should feel encouraged that and almost view this as just adding more staff, really, in essence. If Trevor James is pulling double duty, having to recruit, and budgets are tight, so really having to get creative and finding players. And so that should actually, to your point, a positive move. So adding infrastructure, adding personnel should be for the best, but obviously they'd have to get that right new body in there. What kind of traits do you think would aid in getting DCFC to higher heights?
One of the things I'm looking for is a guy that can build up an attack. I think one of the things that Trevor James kind of lacked, especially in these past couple of years, was kind of this ability to take a defensive-minded team and push the ball forward. They have talent up front in Dario Suarez, and Ben Morris had a really good breakout season after a bit of a slow start. But you still kind of saw the inability for this team to kind of translate, like take the ball from that back line and get it to those forwards. You saw a lot of long balls going forward. You saw a lot of just kind of slow, methodical type action that kind of just got clogged up in the center of the pitch. So I want to see a coach that has has experience with an attack-minded team, especially as Trevor James presumably looks to bring in more attacking talent for 2024. I don't have a name or anything out there for you, but I want somebody with ideally USL championship experience. And you're not going to be able to afford anyone with like a MLS or higher experience. I want to see someone who knows this league, someone who knows the way other teams play and can develop a good game plan based on prior experience within the league. And it doesn't necessarily be a head coach. It could be someone coming up from an assistant ranks of another team. If you want, my dream hire, I think it would be really fun for them to pry Ben Pierman away from Charleston Battery, who coached Detroit City FC in the amateur days before he left to go coach Memphis 901 and now Charleston Battery. That's sort of a pipe dream sort of thing. But we would love to be able to say Hail Caesar again on the sidelines in the stands at Keyworth Stadium. But essentially, like I said, I kind of want someone with experience in USL and kind of knows how to build an attack going forward.
That seems understandable. And do you think that I wonder if that kind of like back three approach that Trevor James used so much, I wonder if that will remain a staple with him as general manager, or if that'll evolve based on the coach's philosophy?
I think it'll evolve mostly based on the coach's philosophy, but because especially towards the end of the season, they kind of moved into a back four. It was sort of by necessity, as Michael Bryant was required to wear so many different hats on that team that they didn't always have the ideal setup for a back three. And you saw a little bit more back four towards the end of the season with Carroll and Matt Lewis kind of anchoring the middle there, with Amu Mensah, Reese Williams, and O'Neal Fisher every now and then slotting in as a substitute towards the end. So yeah, I think he'll look at this team and say, okay, we have the ideal form for a back four, but leave open the flexibility to do a back three, and in general leave it up to the head coach to determine what philosophy fits best, and Trevor can go out and kind of get those players to fit that system.
Interesting times ahead, but even more exciting, there is a playoff game to watch. Detroit City FC will be playing a probably much more motivated version of the Pittsburgh Riverhounds Saturday night at 7:00.
Yeah, it's I'm gonna be watching, of course. Like I said, not too confident. But if I am watching this game, I'm going to go in there with the expectation that you're going to see a very defense-minded Detroit City FC, and they're going to look to do two things. One is contain Pittsburgh's attack. Pittsburgh, they finished first place for a very, very good reason. This team, as I pull up the standings right here, they scored 50 goals and only allowed 29. That's tied for the best goal difference in the Eastern Conference, second best in the league overall. So you're looking at a team that can score at a decent rate while also keeping their opponents out of the net. For comparison, Detroit City scored 30 goals and only allowed 39. So this is a team that has both a better attacking record and a better defensive record than Detroit City. So Detroit City is going to come out of this game and say, we need to defend first. You're going to see a lot of 8 and 9 players, if not all 10, behind the ball at all times. And any sort of attacking is going to have to be done on the counterattack. But in reality, I think you're going to look at a Detroit City team that's going to look to just grind this game out through 120 minutes and into a penalty shootout. I feel like that's the most realistic way they're going to win this game. They might try to smash and grab a goal and then get even more defensive after that, but don't look for this team to go out and attack from the front.
They need a Greece 2004 European championship.
Excellent comparison.
Like score two goals and win a championship.
Right. That you know what? That might be the only way they could end up winning USL Cup, which is not going to happen. I'm not going to fill anyone with delusions of grandeur there, but it's got to be a defensive-minded team, which is good because that's kind of what they've been all season long. But again, I am not going to expect Detroit City FC to go out there and win this game with the attack. They're going to have to defend.
I mean, there's no arguing with a plus 21 goal difference for Pittsburgh and a negative 9-1 for Detroit. And, they essentially have, a whole nother third of points. I mean, Detroit City FC finished in 8th spot with 41 points and Pittsburgh with 67. So, I mean, that's a pretty big gap there.
For quick reference, the earlier away fixture when Detroit City went to Pittsburgh earlier this season, Edward Kizza scored for Pittsburgh 8 minutes in, and then Burke following 51st minute. So they came out of both halves gunning. This was back in July, and Detroit City FC never really stood much of a chance in that game. So it's going to take an all hands on deck sort of defensive effort.
Yeah, just a little bit of a side note. The season is incredibly long because
yes,
I attended about every game in the first half of the season. That feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, I unfortunately only made it to 1.5 games for Detroit City's men's team this year, but I watched most of them on ESPN Plus. Aside from like that Phoenix game where Phoenix went up 3-0 in the hour mark. It said I'm like, it's midnight. I'm going to bed. I'm not going to stay up and watch this. But yeah, it's a long season. I mean, we look back. The season started way back in March. Preseason goes back into February. It's a grind, and that goes back to our depth conversation we had earlier, that Detroit City needs more of that, and I think Trevor James will be able to get that, but it's probably going to cost them in this playoff game here too.
Side note, a lot of this story related to Trevor James and whatnot, there's been a lot of use of the word gaffer, and while that's fine, I mean, he's a British man, I've never been feel comfortable. I'm not a soccer linguist, curmudgeon by any means, but I've never been able to bring myself to say gaffer.
I can't say I've really said it much, but it doesn't really bother me. I mean, you're the one who spent part of their life in England. I've never been over there, so I'll leave that to you to judge the use of the term.
I guess once you get to the sneering sort of thing, I guess if people are going out of their way to use these words, that's not in my lingo, so I'll let it go. And that might be more of a newsman usage. They're trying to find all the different words for the same title, so they don't have to say just a quick head coach 90 times. A
quick cursory Google search says the origin of the term gaffer in England is a head of a group of laborers. So I guess it kind of plays into the working class identity of not just Detroit City FC, but the entire city of Detroit, if there's that. So I guess it works.
Well, good on you, Gaff.
There you go.
See, I used it once. And then and then kind of moving on a little bit, in another part of town,
oh boy,
the Michigan Stars had a bit of an action-packed night the other night against LA Force. They ended up getting a late controversial win, or at least late in the eyes of the LA Force. And then there was like an old-fashioned bench-clearing brawl there, which seems to not be too rare up there in Romeo.
Detroit City FC has been speaking from experience back from when Michigan Stars were an amateur club. I remember games against Michigan Stars going into, the whole sort of brawls and everything. And Detroit City FC had coaches sent off. Michigan Stars had coaches sent off. And everyone remembers the last time these two teams played in Nisa before Detroit City went into the USL Championship. And there was, George Yunkai was out there yelling at the Northern Guard. It's just the team's identity, I guess, is just bare knuckle boxing and soccer mixed into one.
And there was a somewhat humorous speculation about, what are they going to do to these players, since, the ownership has a large stake in the league itself, and the league's future is, there's a lot of speculation related to it. Did you say you found what, in fact, there was some punishments?
Yeah, this was handed out on October 17th, yesterday, if they were recording, probably 2 days ago for you, the days you're listening to this, at least. So 5 people in general have been suspended. For the LA Force, Bruno Costa, their assistant coach, is getting 2 matches. Diego Castillas, midfielder, is getting 3. And then for Michigan Stars, assistant coaches Remy Tazafor gets 4 games, and Enes Djokovic gets 1 game. And then Katara Umeda will get 1 match, which is just the regular season finale, coming up against I don't remember who they're playing, but it's coming up this weekend. And can you tell me and Nisa are just kind of like, yeah, whatever, who cares?
I couldn't tell.
Right? But it looks like, based on these suspensions, that the league is looking at it and saying, you know what, there are no good guys in this situation. Both teams are kind of at fault for this one, so which makes sense. It's not a good look for the league, a league that's already struggling with reputation issues and all sorts of that. But I mean, if you want to take some positive out of this, Michigan Stars is looking like they're going to finish in a number 2 spot heading into the playoffs, looking to defend their NISA title.
Yeah, funny note that you're speculating that every winner of NISA may be a Michigan-based team.
Yeah, because Detroit City FC won all of the NISA trophies while they were there. And then in the first season Detroit City FC was gone, Michigan Stars lifted the trophy. That was last year, and they're going to be in a good position to kind of repeat and keep the NISA championship right here in Michigan.
Yeah, the Stars won last year, and then Chattanooga had finished them ahead of them in the league last year, and it's going to be the same thing this year with Chattanooga with 1 game to play for the Stars, and Chattanooga has a 6-point lead with two games to play. So Chattanooga will be the regular season winners in NISA, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win that the postseason though. Right.
Yeah, and part of the reason that there was such a kerfuffle at the end of that game is because the win for Michigan Stars at LA put them ahead of the Force in the standings, and now in order for LA to get back into that second seed for the first round bye, they have to beat fellow Michigan team Gold Star Detroit on the final day of the season.
Yeah, Gold Star Detroit is not going to make the playoffs.
No, they did not particularly have a great debut season. They're going to finish bottom of the table on 12 points through 24 games if they don't pick up anything against LAFC on Saturday. Or LA Force, I shouldn't. They would not pick up anything at all against LAFC should those two teams meet.
I think is it LAFFC?
It's just maybe, yeah, I don't know, but it's the LAF. It's the black and gold colors for both teams. I'm easily confused. I apologize. Didn't mean to disparage Will Ferrell's wonderful MLS team.
No, how could you? I like how Will Ferrell memes. He's got so many movies with so many good parts that I don't think you can ever run out of Will Ferrell memes.
No, he's a very memeable actor.
Another little note that I have is there's a good story up on Protagonist FC, another a great lower league soccer outlet, highlighting Livonia City FC fan Wheaties. I don't know if you've come across him on social media, but the story is all about the one-man supporters group. It's a pretty good story.
Oh, I'll check that out one. I have not come across this.
Yeah, so kudos to him. He's liking and commenting and responding to pretty much like all of Michigan Soccer Central stuff. Obviously Livonia stuff, through and through in the story. On Protagonist, details how once he found out that Livonia was in his backyard, he's been diehard ever since. And
every club needs a super fan.
Yeah, and it's such a. I especially like the quotes from I think his name is Garrett, and I just have seen him on online a whole ton. So shout out to him. He's getting some kudos, and that's good coverage, and that's kind of what Protagonist is all about. Shining a light on these smaller scale but equally fun stories.
Exactly, and we need to remember that, and this is true about more than just soccer. Sports is more than just the big leagues. It trickles all the way down to the Livonia City FCs and what have you there. So, and you know what? It doesn't matter what level that team plays at. If the games are a good time, the games are fun to watch, it's worth everybody's time to go to. So support local soccer is what I'm saying.
With that in mind, too, that's how I spent my weekend. I got to do what I love, and it was at a high level. But for the youth, it was Michigan State Cup finals weekend out in Brighton. So I spent the weekend at the field house there doing play-by-play for the MSYSA's State Cup. So that was pretty cool. The Premier Division on Saturday, 3 games, and then another 3 games on Sunday in the Elite Division. There was U19, U18, U17, and there was some really good games, some drama. Here's this one, relatable one for you, Jenny. The last game of the tournament, last 2 games actually went to overtime. One of them went to penalties.
There you go. There's your prototype for Detroit City on Saturday.
Well, I was saying more than as you work in broadcasting, you work in live sports broadcasting.
Yes.
And then you're not necessarily, you love the sports, but you're not necessarily rooting for overtime.
No, and we aren't, because in the grand scheme of things, we are at work and we would do like to go home. Overtime tends to complicate things, particularly in playoff type situations. But you know what? If the game is exciting, in my case, I work games for teams I already support, with the Red Wings and the Tigers and what have you, and the Lions. So overtime, well, I would like it to be over sooner. Doesn't always bother me. Just in the case of like the Tigers and extra innings, it just depends on how long the game's been already, because some games just they drag on, and you don't want them to be over there too long because you want to go home and sleep.
Indeed. You definitely. I remember when I was working in pro hockey. I remember the scornful looks when anyone said the word overtime at any point during a game day.
Yes, I make sure when I'm training backups for me when I can't do a game, I make sure I let them know when you're doing like a hockey or basketball, you do not say that dreaded O word. And for baseball, for Tigers games, you do not say that dreaded E word, because that's willing it into existence, and we don't want those things.
And it's always that guy's fault if it happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I will yell at my talent if they say such things off the air. 'Cause on the air, you give them a pass, but off the air, you don't joke about it. Oh, this one's going to overtime. Yeah, here we go. Nope, don't do that sort of thing, because you're willing it into existence.
I wanted to note before we move on. You were talking about an excellent game is an excellent game no matter where you are. Like I said, I was at some elite youth games this weekend, and I wanted to note I'm always impressed because it's about my 3rd year doing the play-by-play for all these games. I mean, it's a marathon doing 6 games in 2 days, but you get to see a whole glutton of soccer, and these girls are always impressive. Getting backstory. Some of these girls, like, not only are they playing soccer at this elite level on these travel clubs, but, you read some of them, I saw a girl's like studying to be, when she goes to MSU, she wants to be an aerospace engineer. Another one, they're 4.0 students going to, all sorts of really advanced programs, or some other teams had, athletes, they were all like 3-sport athletes, running track and doing volleyball or playing. There was one girl who was all state in basketball and in soccer. So just, I could barely get off the couch when I was in high school. So I'm always really impressed. And the one game I wanted to highlight actually was the best game of the whole weekend, was the very last one. I mean, I'll forgive them for going to overtime, but get this for scoring here, Jenny.
Okay, hit me.
It was the Nationals Union versus the Michigan Rangers. So the Nationals Union team led by Henry Steinwasser, a familiar name.
The Steinwassers are all over Detroit soccer at all levels, aren't they?
Yeah, this was a Nationals Union. You see that name everywhere. They are a staple of Michigan soccer and coaching and players. But yeah, so it is against the Michigan Rangers, which is a rebranded Fire Juniors this year, and they were really impressive, led by Dean Muckle. But so the scoring went like this: the Nationals went down 2 goals within the first 20 minutes. It was 2 goals by the Rangers at the 11th and the 18th. And then before halftime at the 32 and 37th, Nationals with back-to-back. Halftime, 2-2. 4 goals and a half. That's fantastic.
It's a barn burner.
And then it goes all the way through second half. We go to extra time. So last game of the day, going to extra time is great, like we said. But straight, 2 minutes into the first 15-minute extra time period, they do the whole FIFA, 2 15-minute periods. The Nationals Union get a third, and so they've come all the way back from 2-0 down to lead 3-2 in extra time. But there's another twist.
Dun, dun, dun.
In the second half of extra time, the Rangers score twice, and we for a while there we thought we were 3-3 going to penalties, but in injury time and actually there was more injury time because the referee hurt his knee and actually had to be taken off in this game.
Oh my, that's not fun.
So there was even more injury time. Actually, I might be getting my games mixed up, but we did have an instance of that. But anyway, Rangers come all the way back again from being down in extra time. They score an injury time of the second extra overtime and come back and get a very dramatic win. So it ended up being 4-3, and we were happy not to have penalties.
Wow, that's one heck of a game. Yeah, it saved the best one for last, right?
Yeah, it really was. And the game before that, which I kind of got mixed up with the injured referee thing, that was the midday game. So that Rangers and the Union that I would first described was the U17 elite. But the game before that, that went to penalties was the U18, which was the Rangers versus the Michigan Tigers. And that one was pretty much blood sport. This was the most attritional game I think I've ever seen. There wasn't any red cards. There could have been, but that ended up being a 2-2 affair that went to end up going to a penalties and a Tigers penalty kick win. But that was an absolute dogfight there. But kudos to all the teams and all the winners over the weekend. I want to make a note of that. And I love doing the play-by-play and just that.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun, busy weekend. I have to ask. You say you're doing 6 games over 2 days, so it's 3 games a day. How much time in between games do you get?
It was actually a good amount. The first year I did it, if it went to extra time, it would literally be no time in between. There's usually 45 to 60 minutes in between the games if they're just regulation time. The games went 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And then this year they actually pushed back that last game to give a little bit of warm up time. But in years past, if it went to extra time and penalties, the extra team the next teams would just walk on and get to it.
Got to keep it moving. Yeah.
But there was a little bit of breathing room this time around. And I thought that was pretty well done by the MSYSA.
Well, your voice sounds really good considering all that talking you had to do over the past weekend. So, kudos to that for keeping your pipes nice and lubricated and ready to do this podcast a few days later.
Yeah, the throat coat tea is essential, but they actually the State Cup in the spring, the boys, there's actually 4 games a day, and that's just a whole nother level. By the second day, the late games, you're using your words very selectively.
Right. Yeah. You got to conserve at that point. Pace yourself.
Yeah. There's not too many elaborations when your voice could go at any moment. But yeah, throat coat tea just to drink a couple slurps just to get a couple more words out there. And, talking so much to where the lips were actually chapped.
Right. Yeah. And if you want to look back in our archives, we did have an episode earlier this year about the boys State Cup with Josh Hackala and Brendan, I think it's Shabath.
Yeah, that was a good one. They had some excellent names in that episode.
Yes, and that was a fantastic episode. If you want to go back and listen to the two of them talk about the boys Michigan State Cup this past spring, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and I'll give kudos. I seem to get the luck of the draw and end up in the field house where it's nice and warm, but there is a dome and a full set of 6 games in the dome across the way at the Legacy Center out there in Brighton. And out there in the dome games was Nate Wangler, who came from the west side of the state. He does some play-by-play for some colleges and the Whitecaps and stuff out there. So he had his first taste of the state cup this weekend too, and from what I could tell, did a really good job too. So kudos to him.
Excellent, yeah, and give props to your local broadcasting talent. It's not easy to make it in this industry, and they need to take every little opportunity they can to get their reps in hope of making their big break. Correct? That's
the hope. That's the dream, right?
Yep, it is. It's something I gave up on a long time ago, and I'm happy working kind of behind the scenes like I do now. But like I said, tough industry to get into. So I give credit to all those guys who go out there and do those marathon sessions in environments that they're not entirely familiar with. And in the case I know of Brendan, who did some work with the Tigers and at Jimmy John's Field this past summer as well, didn't really know much about soccer, but he stepped out there and did a great job covering that boys state cup.
Yeah, good on him. And I think, I don't know what the talent pool is like in other places, but we seem to have a good level at that level of play-by-play commentators here in the state.
Oh yeah, Josh Hakala has done everything at so many different levels. That guy's amazing. He can never get enough credit for all the work he does for the Michigan soccer community and being kind of the guy for the U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, and typically these weekends, him and I are on opposite fields, or it has been for a few series or tournaments, and I'll be crashing out like if we've stayed in a hotel in Saginaw, and he'll be writing an article for some team that he writes for on the East Coast, the Nor'easters, or he's doing something for the Cup.us. Yeah, kudos to him. He has limitless energy when it comes to doing soccer stuff and covering soccer, and he's definitely a cornerstone to Michigan soccer and lower league.
Lower league everywhere. Just he does a great job with everything he does.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good wrap up. Like I said, I've only had an episode here in the last couple weeks, and there's been a lot going on in Michigan soccer, and I think we covered a lot of it. There's been a lot of soccer in the rearview window this year, but some exciting stuff to come. We could see a miracle in Pittsburgh. A lot of high school and college kids are getting into the business end of their season, and a lot of the youth season is actually getting into the last couple weeks too. It's getting dark at the practices before they're done, and sundown at like 6:45 now. Yeah,
it's spooky season, as they say, so anything can happen.
Spooky season. I actually, just before we recorded, I made my costume purchase.
Oh, there you go. What are you? If you're okay sharing.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. If it doesn't end up fitting, you can't, when you buy stuff without trying it on, you can.
Yeah, you never
get ahead of yourself.
You never really know with those things. Gotta love the internet, but you can't try on your Halloween costume early on.
Well, good luck to all those teams with their postseasons and wrapping up the pros, and then, like I said, all the other levels getting into the end of their fall seasons. This is usually the part where I thank you for editing the program, Jenny. So thank you for joining us as a guest, allowing and providing some great conversation to catch up on all the stuff that's been going on. Like I said, it's always true. The soccer world never sleeps, and thank you for helping me catch it up. And thank you for editing this program after we get off it.
Thank you for having me. And one thing I really like about being the guest is I'm watching the recording going, and I can make a note. Okay, I got to edit this here. I got to chop out that part where Rob's potty mouth got in the way. I got to chop out this part where I slipped up and said something stupid. It's a lot easier on me. And you know what? When I go to edit this tomorrow morning, it's going to be super easy and breezy, and it'll be up there in no time.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny. I really enjoyed our conversation. And then thank you, listener, for tuning in, of course. And then be sure to check out at MI Soccer Central across all social media. We post in this and then all the other updates. It really is the home for everyone in the Michigan soccer community. So everybody, until next time, please enjoy your soccer.
Bye.